The conversion to the next chart is the real world, because of the application of the theory of fixed and variable cost. It's going to affect some decisions you'll make about cutting price, additional units, all kinds of things. What I want you to believe is that this chart right here is exactly the same chart as this chart, even though the lines go in different directions. And the difference is, this is a total cost treatment, this is a cost per unit treatment. With me? Let's see if we can convert them. What, you remember, Rob, you remember Clark's $100 was the purple line, right? Remember what the purple line looked like? Just look up there. It's your straight line like this. How did that line now move across the bottom here?
You've decided it's basically the same per unit.
Yeah, we've developed a standard cost, and it is probably basic per unit. For example, when he ships 1 unit over here, he charges $100. When he ships 2 units here, he charges $200, which is $100 a unit, so it's going to be reflected this way, isn't it? Okay. Remember Robin's fixed cost? Nice straight green line? Only now look what happens to that nice straight green line. On 1 unit, it's up here at 400. At 2 units, it's 200. At 4 units, it's 100. You see, it automatically divides the burden, doesn't it? Okay. Fixed and variable add together every place. So if you play the same calculation you did here and sell 1 unit for $300, we still lost money. Out here at 2 units, we break even. You all with it? Now let's play the marginal increment of utility problem. Let me find the right color pen. Nancy, it's July, and you are out there busting your butt, and you sell 5 units, and I sell 3 units. We've got 8 units of sale. Robin, your little dairy garage was never designed to carry the inventory we need the handle for 8 units of sales. I mean, the number of colors, shapes, and all the rest of it. So that morning, Clark, you come to our warehouse with an order that you need an Oyster White 2251, and you open the door, and all the aisles are filled, and everything's triple stacked. Guess where the Oyster White roof you want is? Yeah. At least there will be some version of that sometimes, and that's the problem of the marginal increment utility. So what you now must do is take your forklift, take all that crap out of there, get to that one, put it on your truck, put all that stuff back in there, get to the contractor, go like this, and guess what? It didn't take 4 hours there. It took longer. So a funny thing happened. Our standard cost went to hell once we surpassed the marginal increment of utility. For example, out here around 6 or 7 units, that standard cost curve went up. Now, if the standard cost curve goes up, what other cost curve goes up? Total. Because remember, total must follow. So an interesting thing, someplace right in here, between maybe 5.5 and 7 units, we have an optimally run business. Now, Greg, you know what the next decision we have to face is. You said it earlier. We might have to think about more fixed costs. But I got a different problem. There's other things to look at here. For example, I got January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. For those of you who live in California, you'll be surprised to find this out, but we cannot go up on roofs and nail them together in July. The wind blows up our kimono and it's very uncomfortable. So the roofing business is down here in July, February, and March, peaks up a little bit in April, May, June, July, August, September, November, December. So right now, we're thinking about buying a new warehouse. What are you going to do to pay the rent over here? Not only that, fixed cost decisions are scary because they're not so easily disposed of. Variable cost decisions are easy. For example, Clark, business is bad, don't bother us for a while. Let me show you one. Sterling, Michigan, there used to be a bathtub manufacturer. We had a 4-story die press. Does everyone know what a die press is? It's usually a male and female die that come together with a sheet of steel between them, and it makes a form. 4 stories wide. Because Sterling, Michigan, this company made bathtubs. They would slide a piece of sheet metal in this thing. This die press would fall 4 stories and stretch the metal. You know the part you sit in a bathtub, that's called a sump. Well, that's all stretched metal. That's usually 16, some all stretched, and then it lips over and whatever. Well, every time they made a bathtub in Sterling, Michigan, everyone in Sterling, Michigan knew it. It was like a little, that's right, exactly right. You could be 5 blocks away and go, "Dong," and you knew a minute later that thing would be hauled up and "Dong." What you also might have guessed is a piece of machinery like that's expensive. Over $4 million bucks. A boat manufacturer down in Sarasota, Florida, one February, went into a wholesale plumbing house and bought a $59 sheet metal bathtub. Brought it back to his shop, did a few things with chemistry, and made a thing called a mold. And the fiberglass bathtub business started. So now you have a thing called a product life cycle. The steel bathtub product life cycle business went like this. Within the 3 years after this guy made that first plastic bathtub in Sarasota, Florida, 60% of the bathtub market was some version of plastic. We do not now need this $4 million machine. General Motors bought it for $800,000 for experimental dye work. So that's a little scary, isn't it, Nancy? And I'm not sure what we should do. So now all these fixed and variable cost decisions are maybe something we should think about. Sometimes, for example, it's going to cost us a little more to operate on a variable basis. Maybe not as profitable as we could or should be, but we can blow that off if business falls off or if we have a seasonal business or whatever. No, I want to show you one more thing that I think you'll find interesting. You've got a chart there that looks a little bit like this. See this one? That chart's a little bit wrong. It should look like this. If you want to correct that. That line should come across that 4. Yeah, it should have been on the facer page there. Just correct that.
Did you
Okay.
tell Jenny about this?
It's our fault. All right. I want to do a complete make-believe story. This has nothing to do with reality. So let's pick some dumb names, okay? There is a company out there that makes washing machines, and we'll pick a name. We'll call him Whirlpool. Mr. Whirlpool, and it doesn't matter whether it's 400 or 4,000. Mr. Whirlpool makes about 4 washing machines a day, okay? He makes them, his cost is about $200. And he sells them for $400. So Mr. Whirlpool makes $200 a unit. Can you all see that? There's a little logarithmic game that goes on with charting, and I'd like you to take a look at it. It converts the cost per unit chart to the total cost chart. So watch how you do that. Take a look up here. You take your sales line and bring it back to base. You take your cost line and bring it back to base. And then you will now know what your total is. For example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You see that? And what's really important is what is below that curve. Now, let's go back to Mr. Whirlpool for a minute. He's making 4 units. Now, let's pretend there's a retail distributor out there. We'll just make this name up. It's Sears. And these 2 accountants come in from Sears, and they say to Mr. Whirlpool, Mr. Whirlpool, how many units can you make? And he says, well, our best guess is we can make 8. They say, how many are you now making? So we're making 4. Then they say to him, how would you like to sell us from the 4th unit to the 8th unit at your current cost? And Mr. Whirlpool says, why the hell would I sell you at my cost? And they have a very interesting argument. Watch it. They say, well, you see, your sales price on your first 4 units is here. That means you're making those 8. Your cost is $200 a unit. If you sell us the next 4 units at your current cost, your new cost will be $150 a unit, and therefore you'll make $50 a unit on those extra 4. Here's the kicker. And you'll also make $50 more a unit on the first 4. Is that true?
Yes.
It's not easy. Let me do it again. It's really applying the concept of fixed and variable costs. So listen to it. I'm a manufacturer. My current cost is $200 a unit. My sales price is $400. So that's my line. You see that? If I go from 4 units to 8 units, won't my new cost be $150 a unit?
Why? Why?
Pardon?
Why? Yeah.
Because you make
Because of the volume.
the fixed cost
Because you're-
going
Because
down
the
all
fixed
time.
cost stays the same.
As divided by,
More units. See, the amortization on the machinery, the rent, the supervisor's salaries, all of the costs stay the same. So if the costs stay the same and I make more units, my cost per unit goes down. Is that right? So isn't my new baseline now this line? And on that short piece of sales right here, I make $50 a unit on the 4 units I sold Sears, and I made $50 a unit more on the first 4. So Sears is now saying, not only will you make this $800, you'll make this $400 additional dollars. If I am selling 4 units, you with me?
yeah.
And my cost is $200 and my sales price is $400, that means I have $200 of profit per unit. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now look up here. Let me just do the math. $200 times how many units?
4,
Equals?
800.
So by doing this, which is sales price, cost, you box the chart and turn it not from a cost per unit chart, but a total cost chart.
Okay.
The only reason that's important to understand it is because of the numbers under the curve. That's the logarithm. So let's see what happens. My current cost, I told Sears, didn't lie, is $200.
Right.
They said sell it to us at your current cost, and by selling us those extra 4 units, you'll make $50 on those 4 units. You'll also add $50 to the other 4 units by the same technique, Bob, of boxing the chart. See, the bottom of the box came down another half a unit. Do you see that?
Yeah.
Okay, so now it's not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's 1, 2.5, 3, 4. You see it? These are all extra units.
Mm-hmm.
Paul?
Yes.
That's because you're still selling the first 4 units at the 400 price that you always were. Sears isn't taking all your volume, they're taking
They're taking the additional variable, and that's what they did with a lot of their suppliers. But here's now what happens, more often than not. Yes, Gary.
Well, one, the suppliers that bought the 4 units out there would be uncompetitive, and they wouldn't be able to turn around 4 units a month to those suppliers because Sears is taking that business.
That might happen. As a matter of fact, all Sears does is rebrand those things, call them Kenmore, and everyone knows it's the same bloody machine. You can get it cheaper at Sears because Sears doesn't have an investment. They have no fixed costs in a huge factory. The return on their investment calculation is going to be entirely different than a manufacturer, which is another document called the balance sheet. But here's the real problem. Let's get into the pragmatic world because Robin opened the door on it. It's 10 o'clock on Tuesday night on the 2nd shift, and a big stamping machine goes down. The foreman knows that he's not going to make 8 machines today. Who's your biggest customer?
Sears.
So they put all the units they make into the Sears truck, and these nice little guys that are your full price distributors don't get delivery. So pretty soon, between not getting serviced very well and getting killed in the marketplace because there's a lookalike product out there that's rebranded. It's contaminating the hell out of the marketplace. They switch over to Maytag. And all of a sudden, Mr. Whirlpool comes back and says, you guys got any more capacity? I got some more units to sell. Because his new calculation looks like this. He's only selling 3 units. What's his cost on 3 units?
$250.
$250. And now he's selling the other ones at $200. It's a very wormy looking thing that just happened, you see it?
And he's lucky it only dropped to 3.
Right.
And guess what? Sears does. They extend them credit, they get on the board of director, pretty soon they own them. And now one day, and they've never done this, I'm sure, they walk in and they say, we want you to paint all your machines khaki. And Whirlpool said, well, that's not going to be too good for us. Where does an 18-foot gorilla sleep?
Anywhere it wants.
Anywhere he wants.
This is a Harvard business case study. Sears was enjoined several years ago from doing this any further, and they had to divest themselves of several of their ownerships that they acquired this way. I just think it's a neat way to look at the cost accounting concept.